Well, hello. hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? Oh boy. All right. It's still super freaking hot here, and it's unbearable. But here we are, doing our usual. How hot? I don't think like it's not as hot as like the past couple days, that's for sure, but it's still like pretty unbearable. And we had like a big thunderstorm last night, but like, oh my god. I'm still kind of dying over here. I need to move my camera a little bit again. Oh, there you go. It's messing around with my camera the other day, so it's in a weird, different position. But how are you guys doing? Let's see. Right now, apparently, it's supposed to be 19 Celsius, but it feels way hotter. That's for sure. Feels worse than 19. I'd actually have to put this camera more in the middle now. I don't know. Anyway. I'm excited to continue today with the book because I just found out on Friday that there's actually a sequel releasing at the beginning of next year called Cat Dragon and the Snow Fairies. And yeah, that sounds really cool. We're about like a bit over 100 pages away from finishing this book. Stone Cat Dragon, yeah, I haven't really read like too many chapters the past few weeks, but we're getting close. We're like 100 pages away from finishing the book, so 2-3 more weeks and then we're done. And then we're going on to Gallant. That's going to be interesting. And then, yeah, once we're done with the book today, I haven't done anything for the event yet in Genshin, so we have to do the entire Genshin event. And depending on how long that takes, it might be time for the server reset, like the daily reset 5 a.m. Which then means, since it's going to be a new month, we're going to have the free 5 polls and the new theater reset, so we can do the theater as well. So we have a bunch of things still to do in Genshin afterwards with the after the book. And then Honkai is gonna have their update, I think, this night as well right now. But there's nothing really crazy going on in Honkai that I'm looking forward to poll-wise, at least not the next update. I know the update after that might be the second Fate collab. But even then, I'm not sure if I'm going to be pulling on the Fate collab. Honestly, I'm still just saving for Nihilux. I just hope she becomes playable soon. We might be getting some more stuff tomorrow as well about the next Genshin patch, because the next beta should be available. So we'll see if like they fix Sino and give him a little bit of a buff or something, and we'll see if we get some number changes again. But yeah, we'll see how next Genshin update goes. We will see how the new Honkai update goes. I'm curious where the book is gonna end, because last week when we ended, the Guardian of Tangleroot died. Like, what the hell? I'm curious how this is gonna go. Oh. There's that. Okay. I'm just checking on a bunch of things real quick, but yeah, today we'll see how far we get into the book. Hopefully I might be able to read a bit more today compared to the last few weeks. So far, no stomach issues, no nothing, so like I should be fine, right? We should be able to continue throughout a bunch. We'll see how that goes. All right. Oh, do we have anything more here right now? I know a lot of, like, my Twitter timeline currently is also full of people that are in Germany. They are visiting Germany because this weekend has been a big anime convention. So we have a bunch of people coming over here right now. But that's going to be ending here soon as well. It was really cool to see how many people have come over here and checked it out, and you know, been here for the first time and all that good stuff. Very cool, very, very cool. I sadly couldn't get any tickets to it for it myself, because just no money. Just don't have the monies for it right now, but yeah. Oh, I forgot to wait. Did I? Oh no, I just forgot to enable that. There we go. Wait, how many? Ah, there it is. Okay. I need to check something real quick on my Twitch side here. But yeah, I'm curious what the next theater has to offer, like what the characters are gonna be, what the elements are gonna be, and the new poses and all that good stuff, you know. Oh, we can make. Oh. Oh, you can. Okay. Okay. I'll have to mess around with that later. Okay. We could make some more things happen here. All right, that's cool. That's cool. Oh, damn it. I just closed my music. Oops. Sorry, guys. Music's gonna be back up in a second. I'm sorry. Oh my god. There we go. I always misclick. Do we have anything else here right now? No, I don't think so. Yeah, I haven't really done much this week now, have I really? I've just been like doing my stuff, doing my dailies, playing Genshin, and just hanging out with people. I had a very chill weekend. We watched actually on Friday, we watched the first 2 episodes of that new Spider Noir show, the with Nicolas Cage, and that was actually really good. Like I really enjoyed it. I'm usually like, I don't watch a lot of Marvel and a lot of like superhero stuff and like all that kind of stuff, but I enjoyed it. I just, you know, it's unexpected to see Nicolas Cage being a Spider-Man, but I like Spider Noir is very different in the vibe anyway, so it was pretty cool. Definitely, we're watching it in black and white because you can either watch it in black and white or in color, and it's I think in black and white it's probably better. It definitely feels right to watch it like that, and yeah, it was very enjoyable. Curious how that's gonna continue. Okay. Well, I think for now we can already start with the book, I guess, because like I don't really know what else to do. We'll see how much of the book we can do today. I want to do a bit more because I haven't really done a lot of the books the last few weeks. Especially like last week, I think I only did like 2 chapters. I mean, it was a decent way to stop because it was like such a big cliffhanger with the Guardian dying. But still, I feel like I owe you guys a bit more. Oh, it was not even like 2 hours. I'm probably still going to be reading at that point, yeah. Or about to switch over to Genshin or something. I don't know. Depends on how long I'll be reading today. I have to do here still real quick as well as I gotta publish the latest 2 videos because I totally forgot to do that yet. So we got that, and then I have to upload last week's reading still. I'm so behind on all of that because I just forget. I just forget. I just forget to do it. There, and then we go. Last week we export reading. Okay. There we go, and then that is. Fuck, what part is it? Part 7, okay. Part 7. Private. Okay. There we go. That's uploading. Still can't believe like we did the whole ass 9-hour long stream with the new Genshin Quest in one sitting and everything. Genshin Quests being Genshin Quests again and all that good stuff, you know. Just taking forever. But it was I really enjoyed it. It was such a good quest. But I have so many more questions that still need answering that I have no answer on right now. So we'll have to see how that goes. It's like, I don't know. It was cool. It was really, really nice. I really enjoyed it. Definitely still have a bunch of questions though. But we shall see how that goes and when these questions shall be answered, I guess. Right. We're gonna have an ad break here in a moment, and then after the ad break we're gonna do we're gonna start with the book. I read people are mad at the story. Yeah, I've read some people mad about it as well. I don't understand why. I really think it was pretty good. I don't know what exactly they're mad about on it, honestly. Yeah, I don't know what people thought might be bad on it. Again, I would still say like it's not my favorite story. Like I would still say Alchon Quest is one of my favorite Alchon Quests is still Masquerade of the Guilty, the Act 5 of Fontaine. That was just really, really good. And I fucking love it. But it's absolutely, like, I would say it was pretty good. And I enjoyed it. We got a bunch of lore questions answered. And we saw the whole thing that, like, with the Irminsul tree, which has been teased for, like, so fucking long. So I don't know. It's all just build up as well. One of the biggest questions for me right now is just like, what exactly happened with the Pyronosis? Is it like gone? Did like the Harbingers swoop in before like Nahida and everybody could retrieve it, or what the hell is going on with that right now? That's like my biggest question. We'll have to see if we get more of that in the next few patches or something. So I don't think we really got an answer to that. I don't know, this was supposed to overarching goal, but it turns out nobody gives a damn about them. Well, I don't know really. Yeah, the Gnosis were like especially the goal for like the Tsaritsa to collect, and they have some kind of amplifying powers, but obviously like, it seems like most of the Archons are able to you know, still have like a bunch of their elemental powers even without it. So I don't know. I think they're gonna be playing a way more significant role throughout like Snezhnaya, and hearing about what the goal for of the Tsaritsa is with them, and then there's gonna be some more relevancy towards them. But I have faith that, you know, they've planned it out in like in advance over years and years and years, and they fleshed it out for so much. I have faith that it's gonna be at least satisfying, the payoff. So we'll have to see. There's so much that we still don't know about them, really. We know, yeah, they're the remains of the third descender. They give the Archons their power, or like amplify the Archons' powers and connect them with Celestia, and they basically stripped away the elemental authority of the dragons. It's like, I don't know. We shall see. Alright, ad break's almost over, so we can start with the book here very, very soon. Very much looking forward to it. All right. Can close that. We can do that. And we see. All right. Well, guys, let's start with the book. We're at chapter 23. Okay, 23 seems to be a short one, huh? Okay, 23 is a short one. 24 seems kind of okay-ish in length. 25 is a short one again. Jesus Christ. We have a lot of short chapters coming up now, huh? Yeah, we might do like 4 chapters today if they're all that short. I don't know. We'll see. But man, my room is so stuffy, and I have the window open and everything. It's so cold. It's so fucking hot. We'll be fine. Okay. Let's start, shall we? Chapter 23. The new guardian? Aloysia repeated under her breath. What new guardian? And then she was swarmed by people. Counselors and non-magical folk alike were flinging themselves to their knees at the side of the great dragon, inspecting it, touching it, and embracing it. There was a squawk of horror from the direction of the young man who had been holding the pumpkin, and Aloysia stood up to see it crumble to green, moldy dust in his hands. Stand back, commanded a council witch to Aloysia's left, and a dark-haired woman strode forward, her wand out in front of her like a fencing sword, whipping people out of her way by the collar with each swish of it. In the other hand, between thumb and forefinger, she was holding aloft something tiny that Aloysia couldn't make out. Then she had a surge of understanding. A prattling pumpkin seed. This woman intended to, quite literally, save the guardian's soul. No, don't, Aloysia heard herself shout, but the witch either didn't or wouldn't hear her. As the woman reached the guardian, there was an almighty crack, like lightning striking a tree, and the seed exploded in a shower of sparks. A soul seed could never hold a creature this powerful. Aloysia raged at her fellow witch. It can't hold anything that isn't a magical human. And even then, these aren't the right condition. She can't hear you, Wick. The voice came with a steadying hand on her shoulder, and Aloysia turned to see Ivy beside her, her face set. She's not listening. None of them are. This is what the council has been trying to avoid. Now it's about to get chaotic. About to? Aloysia cut in, looking around her at people crying, yelling, even people stealing food from the tents and making off with them. So let me handle this. You get whatever you need from the greenhouse while you still can. Aloysia struggled the creaking metal door open and found her beloved overgrown jungle wilder than she had left it. The plants burst forth on sight, blocking her way, and she knew they didn't recognize their usual clumpy, disheveled, and tool-belted magic botanist in her pristine white outfit, and cursed herself for entrusting them to strangers in her absence. The air was heavy with the wrong odors. Cheese, eggs, and garlic, the magical botanical equivalent of the smell of fear. Haven't seen a new guardian by any chance? She asked her plans, lamely, slowly moving forward as she did so, her hands out in conciliation. No description, I'm afraid, since I have absolutely no idea what that means. They only drew closer. A red seed pod the size of her fist shook itself at her threateningly, with a sound like a rattlesnake. Then, an empty tin of potash was knocked over under the nearest unit, and she glanced down at a shrinking flash of a familiar leaf, and she knew what she had to do. She removed her white hat with the snowflakes on it, held it out in front of her, bowed her head, and squeezed her eyes shut. What was probably only a minute felt much longer, but then her hat was whipped away and hit the ceiling with a familiar clunk. When she felt it clumsily replaced on her head, before slipping down over her eyes, she lifted her chin and greeted an apologetically swaying Pip with a beaming smile. The heads of the other plants turned to look at the heart-leafed creeper, and then back at Aloysia, and all at once, they withdrew in a ripple of color. Ivy said to get what I need from the greenhouse while I still can, Aloysia told the plants, vaguely as she moved among them, eyes darting for something likely looking. Any idea what that means? Pip appeared between two skinny saplings, a small silver watering can dangling from his vine. A trio of saucer-shaped blooms followed suit, bending and stretching to retrieve forks, trowels, and pruning scissors and holding them out to her. Given that they didn't have faces, Aloysia thought they were doing a remarkably good impression of a litter of puppies gazing up at her holding their leads. Go on, take it. For want of a better idea, Aloysia shrugged off her pack and began accepting anything and everything the plants offered. Weeding knives, brushes, tweezers, half-full misters, even her circumspects, which emerged suspiciously covered with soil. She was just beginning to marvel at how much her pack would hold while still weighing less than a bag of sugar when she heard voices at the greenhouse door and lowered her own. Come on, she said to the plants, hugging her pack open as far as it would go and holding it out in front of her. Get in. Those plants, who could do so, hopped in their pots to the edges of shelves and units and leapt wholesale into the pack. The rest Aloysia scooped up herself and dropped unceremoniously into the depths. As she did, she pricked herself on a rosebush, caught a light sting from a nettle, and hoped against hope that it was a soft landing for them all. A metallic shriek announced the door swinging open, and Aloysia glanced over to see a frightened, fair-haired woman with a crowbar, her eyes wild, framed by the glasswork. Step away from the plant stuff, witch, said the woman, spitting the last word with like a curse, and throw me the bag. Aloysia reached instinctively for her wand, and the woman swung the crowbar haphazardly into the nearest pane of glass. It shattered with a crash, and broken glass rained down around her. She tossed her sheet of blonde hair and moved towards Aloysia like some glittering ghoul. A breeze caught Aloysia's hair and face, and she saw out of the corner of her eye that a window was ajar. It was being opened slowly, almost imperceptibly, by a yellow boa lily, which slithered through it soundlessly, like its namesake. She considered climbing into the nearest unit and throwing herself out of the window herself, but she knew it was too small. The woman was almost upon her now, her crowbar dragging along the stony floor with a sound like screw. Her face shadowy. I'm trying to help, Aloysia said when her voice dared to return. Which is help. It's what we do. Aloysia couldn't have identified the species, but she could see subtle blurs of movement in her peripheral vision. The lily was reaching out and lifting smaller plants towards the window with its fan-like leaves. Like they helped? The woman snapped, tossing her head in the direction of the crowd outside. Your lot have had your chance. We trusted you, relied on you. You encouraged us to, and look what it got us to. The woman's eyes blazed. There was so much anger there, but Aloysia saw mostly betrayal. What have I done? There was a rustle in this semi-distance, and Aloysia knew the first of the few remaining plants had been deposited outside. She had a wild image of them pushing down on their pots and their leaves to free their roots before scrambling off into the forest, soil and all. Wait, the woman was saying now, her head tilting, her eyes scrutinizing. And then, like Aloysia's conscience come to menacing life, it was you who did it. I can fix it, Aloysia blurted. How? The woman barked, with a laugh of disbelief. Got another guardian in the bag of yours, have you? She spat the words sarcastically, and then she thrust her crowbar up under Aloysia's nose. Hand it over. Aloysia pulled her pack to her chest and held the woman's gaze. The guardian is a magical creature. The solution will be magic. while the woman studied her face, Aloysia's free hand closed around her wand in her pocket. She withdrew it slowly, inchingly, and twisted and flicked it with a well-practiced adhesion spell. The woman blinked in disbelief at her audacity, and Aloysia turned and made for the big double windows at the back of the greenhouse, fumbling under the pots and sacks on the sill of their tiny golden key. "I'm sorry," she told the woman frantically, as she upturned bags of spells and jars of seeds. "It's not a strong spell. It'll wear off, There was a guttural scream, the bark of her neighbor's watchhounds, and then a rumbling that shook the ground beneath them. The woman was bent over, trying to untie a stuck shoe with shaking hands when Aloysia appeared at her other side. Without speaking, they worked until she'd pulled her besocked feet free. Windows exploded into sparkling shards around them, and they threw an arm around each other's shoulders and staggered, shifting and swaying for the door. Aloysia turned and saw the yellow boa lily that the last of the plants clutched in its leaves slip heavily out of the window like a rope being lowered. As they passed, Pip leapt from his shelf and twined around both women, steadying them. They made it out of the greenhouse just as the whole building lurched sickeningly back on itself, shattering the rest of the glass in a great screeching twist of metal. Outside, still clinging to the woman as the ground went on shaking, Aloysia's eyes fell on a weedy, mousy-haired man now stumbling, stricken towards Aloysia's fair-haired attacker. She staggered backwards, letting go of the woman, and as she pulled away, with an absent tickle of Pip's leaves, the quivering vine loosened his grip, then slithered wholly onto Aloysia, his earthy roots in their pot bumping softly against her back. With a final thunderous rumble, the ground stopped shaking. Aloysia didn't. Clutching the curve of Pip that had wrapped around her shoulder while everyone else was blinking in shock and picking themselves up and checking on each other, Aloysia took heavy, struggling steps toward the tree line that separated her farm from the next. The light turned green as she stumbled through the ragged line of birches and wandering ashes. It whitened again as she pushed aside a final branch at head height and stepped out on the other side. Where once had stood her neighbor's home, a modest yet proud enchanted cottage, was a cloud of dust and rubble. "I don't get it," Sheikah said to Aloysia, Lan, and Hollis a short time later. The four of them, along with Hedira, Lingui, and Littlewick, were in the library at the corn exchange. The fire was roaring, and Sheikah who predictably had come out of the earthquake with the most cuts and bruises, was under a tartan blanket in the fat, patterned armchair in front of it. All three cat dragons were curled by the hearth, kneeling in front of her. Lan was dabbing healing ointment onto a long graze on the back of Sheikah's hand. "What happened?" Sheikah went on, looking from one witch to the other. "Why didn't the guardian gaiety work?" "I don't know," Aloysia said disconsolately. "There's nothing wrong with the spell. It was a textbook, Guardian's Gaiety. Must have..." Here she trailed off, her voice catching. The guilt was almost unbearable. Must have been the wrong one. The silence weighed heavily. Aloysia wished someone else would say something so she didn't have to keep listening to her own thoughts, berating her in words she had learned from when she was too young to interrogate them. She should have known better. She wished Ivy was here, to tell her all the ways it wasn't her fault. Instinctively, she glanced over her shoulder at the door for the 100th time, hoping that Ivy was about to walk in with news from the council's emergency meeting. Either that, or Eckert, with word from Gipfelbook as impossible as that was given what a short time it had been. Last time they had seen him, he had been standing in the rubble of Aloysia's neighbor cottage, waving his spoked instrument around as her watchhounds yapped at him, and refusing to talk about the messenger bird he had sent straight to his homeland. I can't believe I didn't get what I said firsthand. I didn't get what it said firsthand, Lan grumbled. Not for the first time since they've got back. As the only member of their group who hadn't drunk Eckert's babbling brew, she's been furious to realize that the rest of them had heard the Guardians speaking through the pumpkin in their native tongues, and not as the indecipherable roar everyone else had heard. The ensuing tantrum had emptied the library. Where's the kitchen with that hot chocolate? She groused. How long does it take to reheat a spell? At least you thought to record it, Pika said soothingly. Only the last bit, Lan bemoaned. I didn't know a Guardian was going to start talking in some unknown ancient language. It was another 10 minutes before Grayson graced their threshold with the steaming spell in a bone china cup. Sheikah had begun gently snoring. Aloysia's eyes fell on Littlewick, his russet snout resting on Hedira's hindquarters, and she stared at his perfect sleeping face. She felt guilty for leaving to go to give the book, for letting him get hurt in Castcombe, for what thinking about that made her think about the woman in the greenhouse. And then Hollis's hand touched hers. She looked around in surprise as his little finger curled around her own, and he shook his head pacifistically and muttered, "You shouldn't have to suffer alone." She looked into his eyes then, saw the pain and regret there, and felt a fresh flush of anger that he'd ruined the beautiful purity of what might have been. He saw her anger and pulled his hand away. She felt it with a thump to spare. Once Lan had drained her hot chocolate, gulping it down with such eagerness that she seared her throat with the first sip, she moved over to the nearest desk, where she set up her gammophone and played back what she had caught of the Guardian's words. But there's no need for melancholy. All this is as it should be, as it always has been, crackled the serpentine voice, and Lan actually jumped out of her chair in amazement. We accept it and ask only this: protect the new Guardian. We? Said Lan, the unfamiliar, unbridled grin on her face falling away. You didn't say he said we. We? And a new Guardian? After two Guardians spend a night together in the woods? Our dragon. And there's Snow Griffin, Aloysia said, realization dawning. I wasn't treating the wrong illness. There never was an illness. As she spoke, the library door opened, letting in cool air from the rooms beyond and delivering Otari and Eckert, who didn't look at any of them as he said, "Well, that went well. Hey, Big Butch." Hey, Big Butch and brooding, Lan cut across him brusquely. Any blossom on that Snow Griffin of yours? Spring coat only, please? Think. Confronted with the full, undiluted Lan, Eckert looked startled, blinked, and then tried to answer her. He seemed to understand, even out of context, that there could be something valuable to him in their conversation. He went still for a moment before he huffled, "Yes." Plants reproduce in all sorts of ways, if that's what you're getting at, Aloysia said to her. Spores, plantlets, bulbils, cutlings, she elaborated, ticking them off on her finger as she went. Any weird dust? Lan translated for Eckert. Any bits fall off? Eckert looked thoughtfully again, and then nodded, slowly. Dust, he said. A lot of it. Our guardian too, Hollis agreed. Then I think we have our answer. Lan folded her arms in triumph. These guardians may be sentient plant deities, but they're still as red-blooded as Sheikah's river weavers. They mate, and then they die. The five of them looked at each other as they took this in. It didn't make the pain of their defeat any less, but it did mean they weren't out of hope. If only they could find a new guardian, there might still be a way to save the valley. The new guardian, Sheikah said slowly. It's a shoot? Some sort of sapling? Seems likely, doesn't it? Said Hollis to Aloysia, his expression apologetic. Everyone was looking at her. She realized with a jolt that they were deferring to her expertise. I don't know, she said, shrinking under 4 pairs of eyes. I thought it was suffering from Shepherd's warning. So did I, Eckert pointed out. But you're not a magical botanist. There was no reason for you to know. Look, Lan said, pressing her palms flat together and pointing her hands at Aloysia. I know you're having some kind of existential crisis right now, and I feel for you. I really do. But you're basically the best chance we've got. So come on, what do you think? Back off, Lan, said Hollis, warningly, not looking at Aloysia. Lan held up her hands, and then took out her Yamaphone and started taking it apart to clean it. Meanwhile, Sheikah got down on her knees and fussed Lingui while Eckert fed Otari from his bottomless pocket. Lily! Thank you for the 100 bits. Welcome in. I hope you had some good rest after your long stream. How are you doing, Lily? Hope you slept well. Can't remember any. I feel that I had probably like 2 or 3 weird dreams while I was sleeping earlier as well during your stream, so I'm glad you got some rest though. That's the most important part. We haven't missed too much yet of the book. It seems as though right now with the Guardians, they may not have died from a disease. So that's gonna be interesting to see. Yeah, considering like the Guardian of Gipfelburg and the Guardian of Tangerut met and both have like these issues right now. They're plants. They might have, you know, reproduced through like spores or seedlings or something in the air, and well, the new Guardian basically has been born and the other one died. That's their theory, ongoing theory now. So we'll see. We'll see. We got some Guardian reproducing, huh? A sentient kind of magical plant, maybe, Aloysia said after a few moments. Like Pip? A sentient plant I'll take, Lan said with a nod of approval. Do any start off stationary, or are they all perambulatory from day one? Some are confined to their pots or plots for their whole lives, Aloysia said thoughtfully. But most of the ones who can get around can do so from a couple of weeks after they sprout posts through the soil. So around now, Lan said, assuming the Guardian weakened immediately after the birth, like the River Weavers. We're making a lot of assumptions here, said Eckert, who was leaning against the wall by a bay window, where Otari was curled up, working hard on his snack. This isn't good science. I don't like it any more than you do, said Lan shortly. But it's this, or try to examine every tree or bush in Tangleroot. We've got to reduce our sample size, or we'll be beaten just by time going by. Eckert grunted at this. I might be able to help with that, he said grudgingly, and he extracted the spoked device from the pocket of the coat he still hadn't taken off. As if not doing so meant he wasn't really here. My research, he explained. It's about the Guardian's relationship to magic. This device measures something that's particularly high in the vicinity of Guardians. Something linked to magic, if not strictly magic itself. As soon as the Guardian died, my readings plummeted. But ordinarily, around the Guardian, I tested before a Snow Griffin. He trailed away, and they knew he was thinking of his homeland and whether it was too late for the great creature. Aloysia's heart twinged at the thought. And around Rohan, he said with a clear of his throat. It's off the charts. We could use this to help identify our new Guardian. But I don't know about the readings for saplings, said Sheikah, wringing her hands. Couldn't they be significantly lower than the ones for elders? They could, Eckert said, with a meaningful look at Lan. But it's the best we've got. Yes, said Lan, pointing at him. Exactly. Now, if you're done hijacking the point I was making, Sheikah can use her Waldhorn to summon any perambulatory plant guardians. I don't have a heart song for that, you know, said Sheikah, waving her Waldhorn. But you summon Rohan, Aloysia said, frowning. All the time. It's like I told you with the heart mice. Deer plus mouse, Sheikah said, apologetic. I need to know both elements to figure out a heart song. I can summon Rohan because I've combined the Guardian heart song with the Oarfish one. I would need to know what kind of animal it's expressing, if any. And might I remind you, it only works at short range. I'd have to know where to look, or you'd have to be happy with me disturbing the peace on a town-wide scale. Let's just concentrate on the first part, said Lan. Try playing just the Guardian heart song. Maybe it hasn't differentiated yet. I say you all get out there with your instrument and your expertise and your eyes and find us some likely candidates as fast as you can. What are you gonna do? Sheikah asked her, stroking Lingui idle at her side. I think someone in this establishment is about to develop a very keen interest in reading an enormous stack of books to me, said Lan, looking around her hungrily. Local folklore, songs, poetry. It's often inspired by real events. If I can find the faintest allusion to a guardian romance, guardian life cycle even, a guardian that's below 50 feet, could shed some light on the nature of our little ankle biter, confirm our theory, and give us something more concrete to go on help us find it. Someone should stay here with the cat dragons, said Eckert in a carefully level voice. He had moved over to the hearth, where he stood over the sleeping Hedira and Littlewick. Aloysia saw him pocket his spoked instrument. Why? She asked suspiciously. There was something he wasn't saying. But the look he turned on her, something frightening. Why? She repeated, raising from her chair. Hollis followed, looking from her face to the Giffelbook shepherds. My research is mostly focused on guardians, Eckert said, and Aloysia could feel him trying to soften the blow. But I have been taking readings from Otari for a while as well. Out of interest. And this morning, I took a couple from the other cat dragons for a comparison. Aloysia approached him, slowly, like it was a rabid animal or a stick of explosive. This moment, at this morning, they were all relatively balanced, he explained, still avoiding eye contact. The little ones was a little lower. At this, Aloysia tensed. But he's a lot younger, so that could have accounted for it. But now, he gazed down at Hedira and Littlewick, the two Tangleroot cat dragons. Their readings are lowered. The little ones. It's faint. Aloysia reached for Hollis's hand. This time, she looked at him and felt her chin pucker. And, well, see for yourself. And that's the end of chapter 23. Okay. Damn. I'm scared for Littlewick now. What? What's going on? Not a little Littlewick. Hello? Aw. All right. Let's continue then. Chapter 24. It's all my fault. Aloysia stared, open-mouthed at Littlewick, asleep against Hedira by the hearth, his snout and mittens. They were white, and his innocent nap had suddenly taken on a worrying new quality. What if he's too weak to stay awake? She peeled her hand away from Hollis's and knelt down slowly. She stroked Littlewick, who didn't respond. Not so much as a flick of an ear. She ruffled his neck around the place where even when he was convalescing in Castercombe, he would always have opened his eyes, however dreamily. Nothing. The only indication that he was still alive was his body rising and falling with his breath. Me and Littlewick hadn't gone through the flickering, she said, slowly, and Sheikah and Lan shared a sad look. It'd still be linked to the well where he was born. Should have left him alone. Then wouldn't be happening to him. Sheikah furrowed her brow at her. Sweetie, if you had left him alone, once he got out of that familiar shop, he'd have become a wild cat dragon, she said soothingly. roaming the mountainside, looking for his wizard or witch. That doesn't sound too bad, Aloysia said, stricken. Maybe he'd have found someone better than me. He could only have found you, said Sheikah, and as if this was obvious. She looked around at the others for support, but they all returned confused stares. You waited your whole life for your cat dragon, Sheikah went on, because not just anyone would do. Something about you is rare, Witch Papplewick. That means something about him is too. If you two hadn't met, chances are he'd never have found anyone else, and... Sheikah dissolved into tears. Beside her, Lan looked panicked at the sight. Meanwhile, Aloysia's world turned on its axis. Something about you is rare. That's why it's taken so long for her to find her cat dragon. She wasn't trained for this. Her ingrained instinct was to reject this explanation outright and look for less favorable ones. But she wanted to believe something good about herself for once. She had spent so much of her life being told that everything she did was wrong, that anyone else could have done it better. This time, this one time, it was suddenly vitally important to be able to believe that she was the only one who could have done something. She had no words, so she nodded at Sheikah and concentrated on trying to stop the tears from spilling down her face. Everybody out! Emergency! Oh, is it just you? Ivy had thrown open the library door and stood blinking at the others in confusion. A stream of people flooded in after her, many holding hastily packed cases and almost all of them looking dazed and upset. There was a fairly even split between magical and non-magical people, plus cat dragons, all looking tired and worse for wear, but conscious, their coats vibrant with color, and a number of non-magical pets. A gray picoulaton squawked, "Emergency! Emergency!" as it circled overhead. They're all going to need rooms and meals, Ivy told Grayson, who had followed them in. Have the kitchen staff get to work right away. She looked over her shoulder and called into the throng. Anyone who knows their way around a non-magical kitchen, Grayson will show you to your stations. You've evacuated them? Lan said, possibly more demandingly than she had meant to. With Lan, it was hard to tell. Is that what it was? The cottage this morning? The loss of magic is affecting your enchanted buildings? Ivy blinked at her. So far, just the buildings. Though we don't doubt wands will follow at some stage, and only on the outskirts. Ivy gestured to the 50 or so people milling around in distress and confusion. And on the hillside, she said to Aloysia, nodding to a few families she recognized, including her neighbor and her 2 watchhounds, leashed and glaring around them defensively. The effects seem to be starting with the buildings farthest from the well. It's only a matter of time before they close in. I have my own magic, said Lan, pulling out her wand decisively. How can I help? After a hasty discussion in the hallway, away from prying ears, Lan was dispatched to try and shore up what enchantments she could, beginning with the houses furthest out that hadn't been damaged yet. She wasn't a magic tactual witch, however, so her spells would be patchwork and short-lived. She could only buy the rest of them so much time. Hollis was commandeering to help the evacuees while Lan hurried off with Lingui almost immediately to do what she could for Tangaroot's homes and businesses. Aloysia was bent over Littlewick on the hearthrug, growing steadily hotter and more fraught, both thanks to her proximity to the fire and to her desperate efforts to protect the dozing Hedira and Littlewick from an onslaught of loose hamsters, trundling mock turtles, and inquisitive children. Hamsters and turtles, okay. When Sheikah bustled over and made her jump by hugging her suddenly from behind. Don't you worry, Sheikah said. We'll take care of this. I like turtles. I like turtles too. They're cute. But the Guardian, Aloysia protested. It's a plant. I'm a botanist, a magical botanist, and a witch. I have to help. We know where you are if we need you, honey, Sheikah said kindly. But if you're away from your baby when he needs you, I don't think it'll matter to you if the town around you ceases to exist. Before Aloysia could interrogate this, Sheikah scurried away to meet Echo the Notari in the doorway before disappearing through it. A short while later, when the guilt and the split feeling became too much, Aloysia told herself she could still help by taking on the two remaining roles, monitoring Hedira and Littlewick and searching the library for any of the Guardian references Lan had mentioned. They may have been meant for Ivy, but Lan had passed the cylinder of instructions on the Yammerphone into Aloysia's hand before she had bolted out the door. She slipped her pack around to her front and began pulling out its contents. A set of cicadas, some dragon nip, and a white twig covered in red berries. Oh god. Aloysia started. Let's thank you, Lily. Aloysia stared. Root of the Guardian, she thought, with a creeping sense of urgency. If Guardians are plants, do they come from seeds? She stripped the stick of its berries, then excavated one of the stones messily, letting the pulp fall freely into the depth of her pack. When one of her carnivorous plants poked its head out, snapping one of the 3 pulp-covered heads irritably, she patted it and asked it to bring up a few things that she needed. At the point where Aloysia was hefting a sack of soil out of her pack and to join the wood-handled trowel, green watering can, and white plant pot and rectangular parcels of yellow and brown paper, the women who had been sitting in the armchairs near her got up and moved away. Aloysia shoveled the soil messily into the pot and then dropped the Guardian Stone into it, scooped a layer of soil over the top and watered it. She stood back, hands on hips, wiped the sweat from her brow and a layer of dirt onto it, and watched. It was a full minute before she realized she had forgotten to apply the contents of the yellow paper package in her haste, and made an even messier job of rectifying her mistake. The seed spring spell, the last of it, luckily just enough for 1 stone, went to work. A green shoot sprang from the soil with such speed that a jet of dirt showered the hearthrug. As soon as she knew the Guardian Stone must have roots, Aloysia unwrapped the familiar brown paper package, troweled a scoop of come-along compost into the pot, and sat back. It was a risk, she knew, since applying it to the Guardian itself would cause unwanted consequences, but now that she understood it, she hadn't hastened an illness. She was working on a combination of Eckert's and Lan's assumptions that she had in fact helped the beast to do just the same as many new parents of the animal kingdom did. Put its energy into its offspring, and fast. As Aloysia watched, the plant writhed upwards, sprouting leaves along its length, and then buds which opened into the flowers Aloysia was familiar with from the Guardian's long-held spring coloring. As quickly as they had arrived, the flowers shrank back down as the boughs of what was by now a small tree creaked and stretched and turned red, yellow, and brown. Aloysia blinked and the tree was white. The leaves spiked into the flowers' vermilion berries, which dropped to the rug and into the plant pot below, where they shriveled and puckered while the branches above them dried and flaked and crumbled. The entire life cycle of the berries in a matter of minutes, and no signs at all of animal shape, of consciousness, or of magic. The berries weren't the answer. She wasn't helping. She looked up and realized that the room was silent. This shouldn't have been unusual for a library, but the volume of the place had risen to somewhere around market day levels from the moment Ivy had let their visitors in. Now they were all standing stock still, eyes flicking from the withered plant to the wild-eyed witch behind it. Aloysia glanced down at herself and saw that her stark white outfit was spattered with dirt and more than a little of something bright red and lumpy. There was the sound of two sets of footsteps growing louder as their owners approached, and then the door flew open to reveal a red-faced Hollis, followed at a more measured pace by a gray-haired, middle-aged wizard. Hollis's eyes fell on her, and she expected him to make excuses for her and ushered her out of the room, perhaps into one more suited to a little lie-down, where she couldn't hurt herself or make things any worse for anyone else. Instead, he said with a sweeping low bow and a tone of surprising grandeur, "Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to make your way to the dining hall, the kitchen will shortly be serving afternoon tea." As they fled out, chattering enthusiastically about cakes and scones and finger sandwiches, Hollis held her gaze before he closed the door behind them. He threw her a bright-eyed, firm nod. "Now you can get to work." As soon as Hollis and evacuees had left the library, Aloysia set herself up at the writing desk opposite the fire, where she could look up and see Hadira and Littlewick without feeling like she was being roasted alive, and tapped the Yammerphone the way she had in the axolotl's den. Her fellow witch's voice crackled forth, characteristically direct and impatient. After some suggestions of authors and titles to start with, Lan launched into the list of the metaphors for the Guardian that Aloysia should search for in the text. Aloysia took up her parchment and pen and tried her best to keep up with Lan's breathless delivery. Striding mountain, marching peak, the follower and the followed, skyless cloud, roaming ocean, geranium, snapdragon, iris, the breath, the mouth of the world, the conjurer, the hatter. My personal favorite, Lan said of the last entry, the hatter, because wherever it goes, pointy hats appear. All right, Aloysia muttered to herself as she scribed the last couple of letters onto the page. Got it. Look for these, but also think about extrapolating from them, Lan's voice instructed. You'll have to think like a bard, a storyteller, or a poet. If Striding Mountain is how we refer to the adult guardian, you might be looking for Tottering Hill for an infant. Roaming Ocean might be Wandering Pool. What you're doing here is actually really fascinating magical linguistics. I'd much rather be there with you than out trying to stop bricks falling on people's heads, but needs must, as your people say. Aloysia listened to it all with an odd feeling, something between deja vu and having a word on the tip of her tongue. I know this, she thought, with surprising conviction. I've come across it somewhere before. She dumped a pile of texts and copper cylinders suggested by Lan onto the end of the desk, and a second pile of books Aloysia had read herself onto the other. She lifted down the first tome, Fairy Tales of the Farlands, scanned the index, and began to read. The fire in the grate fell to embers, and Aloysia fed and stoked it more times than she could count. Hidira stretched and Littlewhik lay still. Neither cat dragon rose from their strange slumber. Grayson appeared at some point or other with a jug of water and a hot cup of sweet tea, which became a hot cup of milky coffee, which became a small collection of vessels variously drained while she was otherwise immersed in her work. She scanned collections of short stories and picked her way through the epic poems. She listened to dry oral accounts of the Tangroot Guardian's annual pilgrimage and jaunty verses about the unmatched beauty of its blossoms. Eventually, as she set aside another imposing volume from Lan's much shortened stack and turned, drumming her fingers with frustration to her own shrinking pile, the taper she had lit by her side stuttered and went out. The library was plunged into near perfect darkness, but for the dying glow of the hearth, where the coals were spider-webbed with a fire that barely lit the grate itself. Into this blackness, Littlewhik's eyes opened and glowed, and the cat dragon let out a guttural growl. Aloysia startled and fumbled on the tabletop for the matches. She heard the box slip and the last couple scatter. Bobbing down and feeling around wildly at her feet, she simply couldn't lay her hands on one, and instead found herself at eye level with Littlewhik, whose growl she now saw was aimed at something in the middle distance that she couldn't see. The Guardian's child? Aloysia thought rashly. No, Hidira. But why would Littlewhik be so threatened by her? And why wouldn't she reply? Of course, it must be somebody's lost pet. But then, wouldn't they have noticed it when it was... Well, wouldn't they have noticed it was gone by now? Wouldn't Grayson have mentioned it? As she drew closer to Littlewhik, Aloysia could feel a heat coming off him. His eyes were obscured, and now she realized as the thing obscuring them moved like scuttling clouds against the sun, there was a plume of Littlewhik's own white smoke. His eyes were unmoving as it drifted past. They may have been open, but he wasn't awake. It's some kind of sleepwalking, she thought, with a thud of relief that made her grip her knitted jumper over her heart. She squeezed her eyes shut and waved her wand in great sweeps out in front of her, more as an early warning system to be first to touch anything waiting in the darkness. Then, as a magical defense, aiming for the place Littlewhik was staring at, there was nothing there. And he opened his mouth and let out a ball of fire. Aloysia shrieked as a rosy blast caught the chair and tiptoed up the arm like a sierra of flames. The room was suddenly a midnight bonfire, shadows leaping and dancing like imps. She twisted on the spot and, seeing the half-full water jug, grabbed it and threw it over the armchair, putting out most of the fire, but for a persistent flicker that was something into the shaft of exposed wood near the top. The water gone, she grabbed for the cups, sloshing the last few dregs haphazardly into the chewing flames with a hiss and a smell like burnt coffee beans. When Aloysia turned back to Littlewhik, he was staring blankly, unmoved. Beside him, Hidira slept on. Littlewhik's jaw dropped open again. Before the glow at the back of his throat could become another blaze, Aloysia tackled him to the rug, throwing her head aside to avoid the fireball, which erupted into the hearth, where it scorched the stony back wall and sent sparks spitting down onto the coals. They roared immediately into a magical fire that bathed the room into a pink light. Aloysia righted herself to find Littlewhik gone. Her gaze darted about the room, landing finally on the red glow of his eyes, narrower now among the shadows beneath the table where her coat was draped over her chair. She shuffled under there and found him awake, curled into a fearful ball. His ears were turned downwards, his head and his spikes lifting and lowering twitchily. Even in the pink light, she could see the color of the fur around his snout, ears, and paws had faded still more. Aloysia scooped him up and held him tight to her, feeling his whole body vibrating with panic and bewilderment. Leaning her back awkwardly against the nearest table leg, she smoothed his fur and the snub spikes along the spine in a firm, fluid motion, and began to sing the song that always soothed him. His body softened, his breathing deepened and shallowed, and his eyes drifted close. Aloysia watched with a mixture of relief that she had calmed him and pinching terror that he might have never opened them again. Snapdragon. He woke one day, tossed his pretty head. The words of the song wheeled in her head as she sat with him, willing her heart to stop beating and a cannonade in her chest. And said to sweet Thistle nearby, "Soon I shall be dead." Her eyes widened and her head whipped from side to side as if someone to tell might suddenly materialize right there under the table. "That's it," she murmured, hastening into the room again and laying Littlewig down against Hidira's fur as carefully as she could with the hands that were shaking. The poem kept coming. In his place, another face for whom she was to care. It's the new guardian. Not a petal on its wings, nor branch nor leaf to see. She hesitated, absorbing these words, turning them over and over in her mind. But the answer was clear. We aren't looking for a plant. And with that, that's chapter 24. Wait. What if Littlewig is the new guardian? Huh. Now that would be interesting, right? Just a theory. Just a theory. But it could be. A plant cat theory. What are we reading, peeps? It's right there. A book called Cat Dragon. We have just finished chapter 24, and it's been really good. God, doing like the I'm blind indeed. It's fine. It happens. How are you doing though, Baron? Welcome in. I hope you're having a nice evening and you had a good weekend. Yeah, we're getting close. This is all we have left. This little bit right here. Like a good 80 pages left, I think. What's it about? Cover is gorgeous. I love it. It's about a village. Like obviously with like Cat Dragon, it's like very magical. It has like a lot of magic, and every village, every city in this world has like a giant guardian that's basically their source of the magic. And the main character, Aloysia, her guardian for her village supposedly became ill and it dwindled their magic, and so she went on a quest to try and figure out what's going on with him and how to cure him. We're close to the end of it, so there has been some developments already, but it's very nice. It's a very cute, very cozy little book. Nothing like too crazy and not a lot of suspense, I would say. Nothing too crazy, but just a nice comfy little read. I'm enjoying it. I'm not sure if we're probably not gonna be finishing it tonight, but we might finish it next week, because we usually do like 3 to 4 chapters a week, and we've already read 2 now, so we'll see. Thank you so much for the follow as well, Baron. So I do these reading streams every Sunday around the same time. And then throughout the week, or even after the reading, I'm also a variety gaming streamer. I do a lot of different variety games. My main game recently has been just Genshin Impact. I've been playing it since it came out, and I still have a bunch of things I need to catch up on right now with the new updates. So we're probably going to be hopping on some Genshin Impact after we're done with the book. But yeah, every Sunday around this time, we always start off with reading a bit of the book, whatever book we're on, and you know, just hang out, chill, have a nice comfy cozy evening. All right, let's see. A fun thing to do. I'll try my best to come by whenever I can. No worries. Hope you enjoyed the book. I appreciate it. Yeah, we started doing this like a while ago, because even while I was doing like my gaming and stuff, if there were like some notes or something, like a Resident Evil game, for example, where you can just like read like files and stuff, people have always told me that like they like my reading voice and they like my voice and they would love me to read them some stories. So we started doing that at some point, where I had one of my books here that I just started reading out on stream, and people liked it, so we just continued on doing it. We've been doing this for a bit over a year now. This is, I think, the 10th book we're finishing. And the 11th is already in my shelf that we're going to be reading after. All right. God, it's getting so freaking hot in my room, though. God damn it. Okay, let's continue on then with chapter 25. As soon as Aloysia told Ivy what she had learned from the lullaby, her friend sent a messenger bird up to the Papawick farm, where there were still counselors studying the remains of the Guardian. If they could confirm Aloysia's interpretation of the lyrics, it would alter their search dramatically. While they waited for a reply, the 2 women dozed in the armchairs in the library, since neither of them wanted to be separated from their cat dragons, or, if Aloysia was honest, from each other. Grayson woke Ivy before dawn, an oversized message canister in his hands, and Aloysia opened her eyes to an unexpected sight. The others, variously, and not always comfortably, arranged on the floor and the furniture. She felt her heart swell. By the hearth, Hedira slept heavily. Her fur was so far unchanged, perhaps because it was larger and stronger than Littlewick. Aloysia saw that Littlewick's fading fur had reached right up from his nose to his forehead, patterning him oddly like a red panda. Feeling a stone drop into her stomach at the side, she looked instinctively for Hollis. Before she could see him, though, his hand closed over hers on the arm of her chair as he pulled himself up from where he'd been sleeping, on a cushion on the floor beside her. Aloysia flinched and snatched it away. As soon as the library door closed behind Grayson, Ivy pulled an envelope from the canister and tore it open. Hollis and Aloysia hovering anxiously. Inside was a small square of parchment marked with 2 words: confirmation enclosed. On a larger sheet, which Ivy set on an unoccupied table and unrolled with a sweep of a hand, was a photograph. It showed the Guardian's white and red branches horribly cracked and drooping, green grass showing through them, and within their depths, curled protectively protectively, so it looked as if it was doing nothing more remarkable than sleeping on a cold night. A scaly, horn-faced, spike-covered black dragon. What? Grayson must have given his staff a rallying speech, because around sunrise, a whole team of them trooped into the library carrying platters of breakfast for Aloysia and the others. Thick strips of sizzling bacon, tottering stacks of fluffy pancakes, doorstop slices of golden toast, and great drifts of porridge sat steaming across several desks, where they were accompanied by hot and cold drinks to follow their morning bespelled hot chocolates. "I'll send another messenger bird," said Eckert, looking stoic over his toast. "My team will find a way to confirm whether our guardian is in some way connected to the flesh and blood griffin." "And I can take a closer look at Rohan," Sheikah cried, bobbing in her seat at the thought before wolfing down a plate of treacle-smothered pancakes. Her enthusiasm was infectious. The others couldn't help smiling over their breakfasts. "Lon, you want to come?" But their resident magical linguist was set a little way away from the others with her Yammer phone, absorbed in a cylinder of local lullabies which included Littlewicks. She tapped her wand on it in a way that contained the sound for her ears only, so as not to disturb them all. On the far side of her, Lingui couldn't resist temptation any longer, and had started gnawing on a corner of her bacon. Aloysia looked longingly from the cat dragon not connected to her well to the ones who were. "What about pregnancy?" Eckert said abruptly, and with a thoughtful bite of toast. "You don't think I would have noticed that?" "Or me?" said Hollis. Clearly, this had been bothering him too. "We don't actually know which is the female." "The snow griffin," said Sheikah, now pushing a handful of blueberries around her plate, the better to soak up the syrup with. When Eckert gave her a questioning look, she said, "You did say the beak and talons were golden." Aloysia thought of brown griffins. Their resident zoologist's word was good enough for her. "They're a bird and a reptile," said Aloysia. "Does that mean we're looking for eggs?" "They're a bird and a reptile," repeated Eckert. "We really think they mated?" "They're both guardians," said Sheikah. "The male looks one way and the female looks another. Sexual dimorphism. It happens in a lot of species, but they still make babies." "But to this extent," Eckert said, looking skeptical. "And egg or not, we still haven't answered the pregnancy question." "Dragons don't get fat when they're pregnant," said Sheikah through a yawn, and she set her cutlery down. "Neither do birds. It would weigh them down." "What do you think, Lon?" Aloysia asked anxiously. "I think it's not a lullaby," Lon said curtly. She hadn't heard the conversation at all. "I think it became one as a way of making certain that the knowledge on it got passed on from generation to generation. But then everybody forgot why and stopped taking it seriously." "What is it then?" This was Carlisle. Everyone was so surprised at hearing Ivy's husband's voice that they blinked at him. He gave an awkward smile and shrank back into the seat. "It's one of the 8 prophecies," Lon said with the same certainty as if she'd been asked to identify a cup. There was a clash of plates and cutlery from every magical person in the room. Aloysia saw Hollis and Sheikah share a bemused look. How can you possibly be certain of that? How can you possibly be certain of that? Demanded Eckert, as if she had accused him personally of being a prophecy. You didn't suspect it? Lan responded with infuriating condescension. Two guardians dying. Eckert's face hardened at the suggestion. Okay, fine. One on the brink of death. One speaks to us in an ancient language not heard for 1,000 years. We learn its offspring is out there somewhere in need of protection. And none of you even considered this might have something to do with one of the most powerful predictions in magical history made by the fourth of the 8 sorcerers. The fourth, Eckert balked. How could you possibly know which of the 8 it was? It's in her style, Lan said simply. Then, recognizing they were all goggling at her by their silence, she added with a sigh, no other member of the 8 has such a fondness for floral metaphor. There was a breathtaking silence. The 8 prophecies are, Ivy said, kindly to Sheikah and Hollis. She patted Carlisle on the hand beside her too. Well, you learn about them in the first year of the academy. The same way you learned it from that ancient non-magical culture with all the deities. She looked at Hollis, the ones who adored cats and removed the organs of the dead royals through their noses before they buried them. You're right, it was about the hit count, not damage done. I was failing because I was bursting him for big numbers and wasted time for long animations. Okay, I'm glad that it works now though, but yeah, I figured it would be as much. Glad you can beat it now though. That's good. Hollis, Sheikah, and Carlisle nodded with familiarity. They're part of magical history, but a part so old they feel like fairy tales. Most magical people will tell you that's exactly why they are, what they are, Ivy went on. But there are some. Royal families, Eckert interjected. Councils of elders, Ivy continued, catching Alicia's eyes, which were wide with disbelief. She had always believed they were little more than stories, like the rest. And historical preservation enthusiasts, Lan added swiftly, who know the truth. The 8 prophecies made by the 8 sorcerers at the beginning of recorded magical time tell of 8 events that will shape and reshape the future of magical life. And by extension, all life, finished Lan. Ivy nodded, humbly. Wow, breathed Sheikah. They took a collective moment. So, what are they all? She chimed brightly. What's gonna happen? Nobody knows for sure, said Lan. The prophecies. We have some scant information, but we're talking about texts that are ancient. There are theories for the first one that was carved in rock. They're lost, said Hollis. Aloysia nodded, as snatches from her academy days began to come back to her. Centuries ago. Until now, said Lan with a grin. So, said Aloysia, what does this one have to say about how we saved the valley? I've mostly been concentrating on indicators that this is, in fact, a genuine one of the 8th, Lan replied with a challenging look at Eckert. Now let's see what else it has to tell us. Lan tapped the Yemaphone with her wand and had it play back the lullaby. None of the others could hear it, and the silence was the kind where nobody dared to breathe. Not a petal on its wings, nor branch nor leaf to see, she muttered. Yes,
Pair that with the evidence from the Tangleroot Guardian, and I'd say Elusia's theory is confirmed. She listened a while longer, nodding thoughtfully as she did. And then she frowned, turned to Hollis. The place I love, high above the land. You said you and the Guardian visited that tower on the outskirts of the valley several times? He nodded. Then I'd say that's the place our Snapdragon loves. A few seconds later, she winced, tapping her Yammerphone. Listened closely and winced again. When she finally spoke, Elusia was looking at Hollis with a pleading trepidation. After he declares he's dying, Thistle goes to the tower. Before the fullest moon. And we're warned that if she journeyed there after sundown that day, then Kingdom and Friendwood would surely fall. There was a moment of apprehension, broken by the sound of Sheikah hurrying across the room and besocked feet.
Guys, she said, and the dread in her voice confirmed what they all feared. The full moon! That's tonight! And that's chapter 25. A short chapter, but a good one. Okay. Oh god, okay. I think we could do one more and then we can hop over to Genshin, but I gotta be right back real quick. I gotta grab some water while the ad is running, and then we'll read chapter 26 and hop over to Genshin afterwards. How long is it? Okay, yeah, we can do that. All right, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I got some water. All right. Yeah. Okay. let's do one more chapter for the night, and then we're gonna hop over to some Genshin Impact. Okay. All right. Chapter 26. You don't have to stay, Ivy said to Sheikah, Lan, and Eckert, reaching out and putting a grateful hand on Lan's shoulder as she spoke, before rising from their chair with some difficulty. She rested a hand on top of her bump. The council can't ask you to. The council can't ask you to. I can't ask you to. This is Tangaroot's problem. You shouldn't have to put your lives in danger. Sheikah snorted, giggling, but her smile faded as she saw the serious expression on everyone else's face. Our lives are in danger? Witches help, said Lan, turning towards Aloysia. That's what you say around here, isn't it? You've helped more than enough, said Aloysia, with a sadly respectful nod. As she looked at her fellow witch, she was reminded of all that they'd been through, and it struck her with some depth of feeling that her first impression of Lan had been right. Ivy's got a point, she went on. Me and Hollis have been to the Spire, out of the corner of her eye. Me and Hollis have been to the Spire. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Ivy straighten to the at this revelation. And we didn't even make it past one lycanthrope. She thought of what she had supposed it would have been protecting. We suspect there could be a pack. Not to mention the state of the Spire itself, Hollis added. The whole thing's crumbling. We'll be lucky to reach the top before it collapses entirely. Another reason you need me, said Lan, holding her wand aloft. I may only have been a magic tactual witch for 12 hours, but I already have about 100 satisfied customers. Aloysia saw Ivy wince at this, and her eyes went to a green envelope protruding from one of her friend's pockets. She found herself wondering when this had been delivered, perhaps discreetly, with breakfast. That's not entirely accurate, Ivy admitted to Lan. Several buildings on Withy Crescent and a handful of others at the edge of the valley collapsed overnight. Just a few cuts and bruises, luckily, she said, because Sheikah's hands had clapped around her face in horror. But we've added about 80 to our number since supper. The spells are failing? Said Lan. And there was something shocking about the sick look that came from the face of the most self-assured magic user Aloysia had ever met. It made her chest tighten. You did all you could, said Ivy kindly. It's not your specialism. You've done incredible work keeping things standing this long, but it was always a lot to ask. I'm going to recommend to the council this morning that we start evacuating everyone living in or near an enchanted building to the Corn Exchange, he said. And at the Palace of Justice, working with the farthest point from the well inwards. But that's idiotic, Lan bursts out, and Aloysia saw Ivy blink like she'd been slapped. You need to get them out of the valley. Out where? Ivy said, squaring her shoulders. Out to the lycanthrope-filled wilds? Or the overwhelmed caves? Or the hundreds of other places that can't or won't take on people who aren't from there? What about Gipfelburg? Aloysia asked Eckert, trying to remain calm.
The city's huge. It could fit 10 tangle roots inside it. Surely your king and queen would take them in. Eckert bowed his head.
My king and queen are generally of the opinion that Gipfelburg has enough problems of its own,
He said, shamefaced.
That was their position before our guardian fell ill. Besides, if we don't manage to do this, my home will be 10 times the state of Tangeroo.
We shouldn't have left this. We shouldn't have left it this long, Ivy said, her fists clenched. There was mention of asking for help, with resources, with pairs of hands, even with spell ingredients, she said with a nervous look at Aloysia and Hollis that Aloysia saw had a lot of love and protection. But the ruling of the council was that it would be tantamount to declaring the town's weaknesses. I believe the exact words were, Tangerud has always handled its own problems in the past. There's no reason it can't do the same now. But this is unlike anything that's ever happened before, Lan cried, incredulous. This is one of the 8. We are where we are, said Ivy. I'll do what I can to call in reinforcements from Castercombe and other neighboring states, but to be completely honest, it'll be a miracle if I can get an agreement in time for one of them to reach the Spire by nightfall. Eckhart nodded.
What about guards? The watch?
He asked, and Aloysia sensed he had experience with similar diplomatic frustrations.
Would you send them instead?
Everyone else frowned and gaped at him, but he looked back unperturbed.
There is a risk of life, he said reasonably. Alan's guards are the best trained people for such a scenario. None of you should be letting your sentimentality come before your safety, or the safety of your fellows. If we barrel in there untrained, we could make matters worse.
It has to be us, I'm afraid, said Lan. Or rather, it has to be her, she said with a nod that made Aloysia look over her shoulder before realizing that it had been aimed at her. But had Sweet Thistle turned away, nearer to heed the call, or journeyed there after sundown, there'd be none at all, Lan quoted. The Guardians may start out as animals, but this is about cultivating plants. Thistle is a common motive of the fourth of the 8's discourse. It always represents what we in the business effectively call the gardener. Now it wasn't Lan who felt sick. You're not the only gardener, Ivy was saying. We can get another. You saw them at the hearing, Aloysia interrupted. They weren't keen when the job was was to travel up the mountain. Imagine asking one of them to do this. Aloysia saw Ivy and Hollis share an inscrutable look. Besides, I did this, Aloysia said, sticking her chin out and straightening her back as if it would trick her body into fearlessness. I need to fix this. Hollis looked at her, his jaw tensed. She could see the conflict in his eyes. It was one thing to support her on a choice to go to Gipfelburg instead of Yodvar. This was entirely something else. Being a witch means so much to me. I won't let anything stop me from doing it. She quoted him to Ivy without looking at him. She didn't quote the last part, even when it all blows up in my face. Well, he said in an uncharacteristically gravelly voice. I can't argue with that. But I won't make the same mistake twice. His eyes lingered on hers, and her neck prickled as she caught his meaning. This time I'm coming with you. Ivy gave the two of them a confused, flustered look, but simply said, witchily, I'll get you anyone I can. She ran her arms over her bump as she tried to hold back tears. You know I will. But Tangleroot's guards have been working through the night getting people to safety. This is already a highly volatile situation. It's only going to deteriorate. Ivy was taking short, sharp breaths now. Alicia wants to cry along with her. Beside Ivy, Carlyle took his wife's hand. Okay, said Lan, turning to Alicia and Hollis. You've been to the Spire before. Tell me what we're dealing with. Well, began Alicia, but this was Hollis's area of expertise. There's only one way in, and one way out. A door at the base, he said. So we can't just fly in through an upstairs window. Got it. Can we make a hole in the roof to get in that way? Can we get a hole in the roof to get in that way? Said Eckert. Alicia's heart grew. She gave him a small, grateful smile. He returned a small, dutiful one. Lan raised a skeptical eyebrow. At this point, either I learn something here and take it back with me, or there's nothing to go back to. Eckert told her with a shrug of his boulder shoulders. Worth a try, said Hollis, in answer to Eckert's question. Well, you don't know what it's like inside, though, he added, warningly. The Guardian and I would pass by sometimes, but we never went in. So, prepare for anything, Lan said with a glint in her eye. Refreshing to have a nice, open brief. What about when we get to the top? Sheikah asked, shuffling forward. Her legs were crossed as if she was sitting on a mat in the schoolroom. What then? You're not coming, Lan told her. No offense, but we don't need someone who could trip up any second and bring the whole place down on top of us. Sheikah's face took on a pinched look. When we get to the top, we are dealing with a wild animal up there, she said, her heart curdling into a fence. A scared, cornered, wild animal. Are you going to claim a calm it down without getting your hand bitten off? We're lucky to have you, Sheikah, said Hollis gently, and Sheikah gave Lan, who was already shooting into Hollis, a scowl, a smug smile. If I understood correctly, Aloysia said to Lan, the new Guardian will be there waiting for us. And we just need to help it take enough magic to grow into its plant form. If there's any left by then. Can your compost help with that? Lan asked. It doesn't have the greatest record with Guardians, Aloysia said. And it depends on whether it has roots already or whether that's one of the things we're trying to help it to grow. But I'd prefer to avoid if I possibly can. If you're right about how it's working right now and it draws magic away from Eckert's Snow Griffin to its offspring, it would be like choosing between Tangleroot and Gipfabuk. Then what's the plan? Lan said. I don't know yet. I only just found out I needed one, said Aloysia nervously. If everyone was going to risk their lives for her, they should know that what they were getting into. But she should also do everything she could. She took a stealing breath. But I've got everything from my greenhouse in here. She squeezed her white leather pack. And I've got every book I could ever want in here, she said, gesturing to the library. Lan nodded heartily. I'm sure I can work it out. I'd say we've got 6 hours until sundown, said Eckert, who was poring over a local map. We're going to need 4 to get there by Cat Dragon, and who knows what we'll find there, or how long it will take us to protect the new Guardian. I say gather what you need, quickly. There was a dark look on his face, as if speaking from experience. It made Aloysia think of his late father, as he added, and don't leave any unfinished business. I come bearing victuals for the hero of Tangleroot, Hollis said lightly to Aloysia as he came back into the library, a quarter of an hour later, with a steaming mug in each hand. Everyone else had scattered. Hollis was already neatly packed. His ceremonial sword and several vials and small weapons dangled from his tool belt, and he had secured the shield he bought in Castercombe to the front of his pack. Standing at a writing desk opposite the hearth, Aloysia was scanning the pages of magical botany books so fast that she was barely taking in what she read before handing likely looking ones to the carnivorous plant. A rare snapping wing eater that occasionally reared its head from her own pack. How you feeling, gardener? Hollis asked. Unprepared, incapable, and generally certain this is a horrible case of mistaken identity, but equally certain that I'm so Tanglerootian, I'd rather die and aspire to make a fuss about it, she said, without stopping for breath. Ah, reluctant heroism. Hollis set down the mug, and then shrugged off his pack and took it down next to hers. Spoken like a true chosen one. He perched on the corner of the desk and moved one of the mugs closer to her, taking a slurp from his. The moment was so reminiscent of the Golog and Stromoten that it made Aloysia's heart ache. Don't be so silly, she told herself. It seemed faintly ridiculous to pretend she could be this hurt over something that hadn't even happened. If anything, not kissing Hollis Lancaster should have spared her exactly this pain. She reached for her mug. I'm a simple girl, she said. All I need is a nice smile and a good cup of tea. I really am sorry I didn't tell you, Hollis said suddenly, and her tea slopped over the side of her mug. I didn't know how to. I didn't want to lose you when I... He caught himself, winced, tried again. I was selfish, panicked, and then everything got away from me. I can do better. I will do better. If you will let me. Aloysia, as she tended to when she was thinking, had been holding her sip of sweet tea in her mouth. She swallowed. You don't owe me anything, he said simply. She opened the next book in her stack and ran her finger down an index she couldn't see. I think we both know I do, he said. It happened in Stromoten. Nothing happened in Stromoten. Aloysia looked up at him sharply, wishing she didn't sound so bitter. It was mortifying. You're back now. You've got your pick of girls and witches. You don't have to pretend it meant something that you flirted with me while I was your easiest option, just because you feel guilty about it. It was harmless. I'm fine. Hollis's neck and ears had turned pink. He couldn't speak for a moment. Aloysia piled several books into her pack that may not have been botanical. She was reaching for a volume with a picture of a bouquet on it, when from behind her, he lay his hand on top of hers. The warmth and weight of it surprised her. She flinched, caught her breath. Let me be clear,
Hollis said, and she felt his breath on her neck. You were never the easy option for me. If you had been, it would have taken me a lot less than 20 years to try to kiss you. All at once, she twisted and looked up into his face, preparing to tell him that she couldn't, that she wouldn't, that there was something about Ivy, and regretted it. His eyes were round and heavy. It was always going to be complicated, he was saying now, twining his fingers through hers and holding her gaze. She searched for the lightness in his voice, the joke, but he had never been more serious. Ivy fiercely protects you, and I know how much you mean to each other. Didn't want to get away from that for either of you. I didn't want to be selfish. But when we were traveling together, it started to feel like I might not be the only one who wanted this. She wished he hadn't looked at her straight in the eyes when he'd said that word, wanted. If I'm wrong, promise I won't mention it again. I don't want to be weird, he said, a half smile on his face now. He was going for his usual, easy charm, but Aloysia could see something else there this time. There was fear in his eyes. He held hers and swallowed. But if there's any chance I'm right. Without thinking about it, by the hand clasped in his, Aloysia pulled him closer. His legs bumped against hers, backing her against the desk. With her free hand, she tugged him by the lapel, pulling him down so his eyes were level with hers. She pushed her hands into his hair, and as her lips brushed his breathing was ragged. Oh, sorry. A voice burst through the moment, and Aloysia whipped around to see Ivy in the doorway, her eyes wide with horror. Ivy! Aloysia squeaked, a wave of embarrassment flooding through her, and she snatched her hands away from her best friend's brother. Oh... Ivy stumbled into the room, twisting on the spot, looking pleadingly at the door. I'll let you get back to... Shooting Aloysia an embarrassed, hurt look, she turned on her heel. Bye. The door closed behind her with a slam. She looked hurt, Aloysia said, wringing her hands and looking after her fretfully. It's because I didn't tell her about us. Nothing happened, Hollis quoted, soothingly, and that half smile was back again. But it did. It is, she said as his knee brushed against hers and she grasped a fistful of his shirt. Isn't it? You tell me, he said, an openness in his face as he looked down at her. His chest was rising and falling shallowly. Did she want to do this? The question was laughable at this point. Every part of Aloysia was in agreement, it seemed, except her head. But the way Ivy had looked at them, at her, Aloysia was carelessly putting their friendship at risk. Aloysia looked into Hollis's dark, patient eyes again. I'm sorry, she said through gritted teeth. I can't. Not until I have spoken to her. He dropped his forehead against hers. All right, he murmured, Their eyes closed and their fingers twined tightly as they fought to put their feelings aside. "Let's go find her," he said then, with sudden brightness and grinning broadly. He twirled her in the direction of the door. "Now?" she said, with a laugh. "I'm sensing you think there are higher priorities," he teased. "Like," here he squinted at her performatively as if trying to read her face, "saving the valley?" She gave a breath of laughter at this. "All right, what do you need from me?" he said, looking at her earnestly. Her guard was still down, and she could only chew her bottom lip meaningfully as she looked at him. "I mean, that's on the table," he said, playful. "That's always on the table." He strode over, knelt down, and shook the desk by the leg as if testing its sturdiness. "That can be on this table." She laughed, and he beamed openly at her. "I need you to tell me absolutely everything in your own words and then never lie to me again," she rushed out, before turning briskly back at her stack of books, taking down two at once. And then she turned and shot Hollis an expectant look. "In your own time." Quickly, seriously trying to stay detached from the tale, but unable to look her in the eye as he told it, Hollis regaled Aloysia with the same story of the Guardians of the Mountainside that Eckert has told. She packed and rejected books until the stack was diminished, and then requested the carnivorous plant fetch her magical botanical tool belt and a few other things. As she eyed Hollis and listened, she only stopped him when he added a detail that Eckert hadn't. "Our guardian stopped eating?" she said, pausing as she tested how secure a couple of the vials were on her belt. "You're sure that was after he met the snow griffin in the woodland?" Only for a few days, he said, and nodded, worry crossing his face. "As a shepherd," she asked genuinely, "is that normal for him?" "It was odd," he acknowledged, nodding slowly. "I was worried about it at the time, but then he got better after we visited Tangaroot. I assume he'd been homesick, if guardians can get homesick." "Or he had his mouth full," said Aloysia thoughtfully. "He's a dragon, basically a reptile. Plenty of dragon species carry their offspring in their mouths, like crocodiles and alligators do. But how could they have made it to give a birth at the same night?" "I don't think they did. When you and Eckert confirmed the Guardian had pollen, I thought they must have, physically brought the stamen and pistil together," he said, wishing he wouldn't smile at her like that when she talked about plant reproduction. "But I could be looking at wind pollination." "So you're saying they mated," Hollis said, the tips of his ears pink again. "Without ever meeting, yes? Then they were drawn together because they had to get their offsprings to the spire for its transformation. I think the meeting in the woodland was the handoff. So our dragon didn't eat because he was carrying their child in his mouth." "Or their egg," Hollis put in. "Maybe they wanted to keep it safe in its egg for as long as possible, then hatch it nearer the spire to make its journey easier." Aloysia nodded. "When was this again?" she asked. "It changes the whole timeline." "Spring, just before I visited Ivy." "No wonder you walked the Guardian right up to the Corn Exchange's door," Aloysia thought. "You weren't letting him out of your sight again." "I visited you as well, actually," he said, pushing his hand through his hair.
6 months ago? She couldn't believe how long he'd carried all this around with him. He seemed fine after that, Hollis said, nodding. A bit tired, yes, but we were always moving. We'd been up and down the mountain, all around Tangleroot. We were both exhausted. It didn't seem like it was really anything to worry about until right before harvest night. He cast his eyes down, ashamed anew. Aloysia had to stop herself from squeezing his arm in reassurance. There was no time now for where it might lead if she let herself touch him again. That explained how it's supposed to make its own way to the spire, she said, with a clear of the throat. It's not exactly a newborn. It was then that Littlewick stirred. Aloysia's head snapped in his direction, but she hesitated. Eckert said, "Don't leave any unfinished business," she said, as if Hollis needed reminding. How did she think they'd get into this conversation in the first place? I have this idea about Littlewick. She tightened her tool belt and secured it for something to do that didn't involve looking at Hollis. She wasn't sure if her idea was selfish, and she didn't want to watch him thinking about that about her. You should get to say what you need to before you go, he said, and she knew his hesitation had been filled with one word: goodbye. If you have any way of doing that, you should do it, for you and for him. She set down her pack beside her, and her carnivorous helper retrieved the dragon nip. She plucked off a leaf, thanked the snapping wing eater, and let it take rest into her pack. Littlewick, Aloysia whispered, crouching down by him and rubbing the leaf between her fingers to break the surface. She could smell the same fragrance that had filled Sheikah's cabin when she'd cooked with it, minus the fishy undernote. She laid a leaf at his snout. On the hearthrug, and seconds later his eyes fluttered open. She swept him into her arms and held him close, looking down into his confused eyes. I know you're not feeling well, he said. I want you to know that you're going to get better. I have to go out now to get your medicine. But I just wanted to see you before I do. His gaze focused on her, and a familiar forked tongue reached out and licked her chin. He flexed all four paws, playfully, and for a moment he almost seemed like himself again. Ready to go? This was Eckert in the doorway, his own cat dragon at his side. It's not looking good out there, he said, firmly but not without sympathy, as his eyes traveled from Hollis's face to Aloysia's. I'm sorry. We can't afford to wait any longer. Aloysia squeezed Littlewick one last time and kissed him as she lay him down next to Hidira once more. She ruffled Ivy's cat dragon's fur too before standing and marching over to the door. Traveling light? Asked Eckert as she reached him, and she realized that she had left her pack behind in her haste. She winced at how shambolic she always managed to look in front of him. I'll go back for you, Hollis volunteered, and he hurried off. As Eckert steered Aloysia out of the library, she hoped Hollis's sentiment would hold up where they went next. No Ivy? She asked. As the company gathered in the ballroom, everyone shuffling and quiet at the weight of what was about to happen, incongruously, Aloysia noticed that there were several tents pitched on the black and white tiles. They must be taking on more evacuees by the hour. Just then, Carlyle dashed across the room, tailed by Grayson. Are you certain this is all you need, sir? Grayson panted, his usually impeccable demeanor flustered, sweat beading on his forehead. I think so, Carlyle said, with a panicked look over his shoulder. Hot towels and water? May I suggest, sir, wheezed Grayson as they hurried through a door that Aloysia knew contained a stairway, that we also provide midwife. Guess we're not getting those reinforcements after all, said Lan sardonically, and Aloysia and Hollis were forced to leave for the Spire, knowing that on top of everything else, they would be gone when Ivy needed them the most. And that's the end of chapter 26. And with it, the end for today's book. Oh my god. Lily! What the heck? Thank you for the 50 bits. Don't you honk at me like that. You're cute, Lily. All right. Now it's time to set up everything for some Genshin.
How's Kadar?
That was an interesting TTES. Okay, let me just quickly change my things around and then we can hop over to some Genshin. I have to do the entire event. I haven't done anything on it. I don't know what to expect, but it's gonna be fun. Finally playing the event and then probably theater. There we go. What have you guys been up to while listening to the book, though? You done anything exciting? Have you been productive? Have you been chilling? Anything fun? Okay, we can do this, and then we go here. All Hoyo dailies, let's go. Wrong. I was farming low for Mint and Nikkei, but needed to lay down. I'm glad you got a bit more rest though, Lily. Now on ZZZ, let's go.